Welcome to Get and Keep Biz, a video learning series. My name's Tim McMahon. We'll talk about positioning today. Positioning is how the offering is perceived by the eyes of the customer. That's a very important statement. It's not how it's viewed by the members of the firm. We'd like to make that positioning clear, and there's a way to do that, and we'll get into that right now. But first, I'd like to be able to take a little test here. I want you to line up these 4 food items with these 4 words. I bet you can do it rather quickly as I peel them onto the screen, and I bet if you came up with this, that's probably what you came up with. That consistent, late night, fresh, and healthy describe, in a word, those particular concepts. This is something that leads to the differential advantage. A differential advantage is essentially a benefit or a cluster of benefits offered to a considerable group of customers who value and are willing to pay for but cannot get or believe they cannot get elsewhere. So I'm going to let you read the rest of this when you get a chance to look at the deck. And we're going to move on to exactly how we go about putting this together. It's called a positioning statement. It differentiates one product from another. It defines a target market, articulates the offering's most important benefit, and provides support evidence to support the claim. Supporting evidence to support the claim. There are 4 essential components, as we just said: defining the target, specifying the value, determining the competitive set, and providing the evidence. So let's look at Southwest. Fill in the blank statement might look something like this: is the best value in short-haul travel among all domestic air carriers because it provides low-priced, on-time travel. That's what we will call the fill-in-the-blank positioning statement, a term that we learned from Alvin Silk. Now, the market analysis is where we get to doing all of this. Remember this early on in the business analysis phase, and we understood the company, customer, collaborator. Well, when we get to positioning, 3 things will stand out: the company, the customer, and yes, the competition. So let's look how we play that out. Here is what we would call a perceptual map of the beer business based on 2 components: heavy, light, budget, premium. So price and basic quality of heaviness or lightness. So we look at this and trying to map that onto the consumer's mind. That's what we do a perceptual map for. Try to understand where these positions might exist. This is the kind of thing we attempt to do. So let's think about answering these 3 questions for your particular company or your brand. What your brand does best, what your competitor does best, and what consumers want. Those 3 things kind of form the basis for a good Venn diagram, with the center being the USP, or unique selling proposition mapping. It identifies your space and allows you to act appropriately with respect to each one of these particular positions, if you will. So when we ask and answer those questions, we really have a pretty good fix, and we can sort that out and make some sense out of it in terms of where we might want to be. And obviously, when we find out what consumers want, what our brand does best, and we line those up, we have open and clear sailing. Your brand can own the space. Undifferentiated means we know what our brand does best, but what your competitor does best is just very similar to what we do best. So it's undifferentiated. Emphasis on innovation and emotional connection might be the order of the day, because it's the only way you're going to make a difference. Highly competitive space would be over here, where what consumers want and what your competitor does best kind of line up. That means that we have low consumer interest in our product, and they maybe see a bit of a commodity marketplace. This little diagram describes the elements of positioning from the customer, the competition, and the value proposition, okay? And if we think about the way that we break those down deeper, we really start to understand it looks very much like the fill-in-the-blank positioning statement, doesn't it? Because customers are the target customer, competition is the frame of reference, and value proposition is the point of difference. 2 distinct positioning statements. Apple Computers offers the best personal computing, and this is because we understand that there is a particular target segment, we understand that there is a particular frame of reference, and we understand that there is a point of difference, and essentially this is the way that shakes out. The best personal computing experience to students, educators, and creative professionals. Secondly, we understand that the frame of reference is personal computing. And thirdly, we understand that the point of difference is innovative hardware, software, and internet offerings. Now, this statement goes back 20 years. So I pull it out because it stands in stark contrast with the competitive set at the time, which, by the way, was riveted on personal computing. We don't think of it that way in the 2017, do we? So for Apple back then, Apple is the simple, innovative tech choice among all technology products because they own and control the tech platform that they develop, right? They build a real wall around the customer because you can't really escape it. They have it bracketed, if you will, from a computing device to a handheld item like a phone or a smartphone or an iPad. Target segment, very clearly, the three components are there. So when we think about this, we know that positioning occurs in the mind of the consumer, as we said at the outset. However, as marketers, we must understand the market opportunities. What's out there? How will we concoct a value proposition? And that basically lays out these 3 points again. We look at target segment for whom, frame of reference, the point of parity. How are we similar to the others in the marketplace? And the point of difference was the reason to buy, and how are we different? So if we think about something like cooking oil, we will think about who is the target? Cooks at home. What's the point of parity? Well, Mazola, Wesson, and then there's this Bertolli. Now, the difference between those 3 is that Bertolli is really olive oil, and olive oil, by its very components in nature, a little healthier oil for us. So we move that down to a point of difference. It stands out among all cooking oils because it is healthy cooking oil. So let's think about another reason that we might take something like corn oil and put it into a better differentiated position. That would be something like PAM. It's corn oil, essentially, but it's cooking spray. It's driven under aerosol. It's differentiated because you can use this now very conveniently to coat your pans to create a non-stick surface. A positioning statement defines the value proposition of the product to the target market. And the difference becomes this, is if you are successful in positioning and you've created a desirable place that people can't get elsewhere, well, positioning is implemented through all those elements then, isn't it? We take that idea of positioning and we push it through the 4 Ps, as we talked about it before: product, place, price, promotion. And what we end up is, if we have a point of difference in price, we probably have created value. That's simple. Should focus on a few key benefits, the unique selling proposition. It must be defensible, and it must require making hard choices. Finding these kinds of opportunities in the marketplace is not easy, and I would not suggest that to you that you can do it without anything other than a really good process, right? So when we think about positioning on that perceptual map that we showed you before, where is cooking oil, where is oil? Well, if we look at messy, clean being 2 opposites, and we look at functional and healthy, then we might see something pop up like this. Mazola down in the lower left. We might find that olive oil is up in the upper left, and PAM is in the far right upper. So this is the way that we kind of break down, understand, and visualize perceptions of positioning. Okay? That's the way that works. Review: differential advantage is a benefit or a cluster of benefits offered to a sizable group of customers which they value and are willing to pay for but cannot get or believe they cannot get elsewhere. Similar to a unique selling proposition, it's a competitive advantage. A positioning statement defines the value proposition of the product to the target market in 3 areas: target segment, frame of reference, and point of difference. Positioning is what the prospect does when it chooses to place a product in her mind. The marketer must devise a statement from the perspective of the customer. Positioning is also a process of identifying an appropriate market niche. And this is what it is all about. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit more about positioning. And in this deck, we will investigate how space is identified and translated into a compelling selling proposition that delivers a differential advantage in the marketplace. I'm Tim McMahon. See you next time.